There's a metal column in India that has been standing in the open air for 1,600 years. No roof over it, no shelter, no treatment, no maintenance. Just standing in the monsoon, in the heat, in the dust. And it has not rusted, not a little, not in one spot, not at the base, not at the top where the rain hits hardest. Not one single spot in 1,600 years. Now, your brain just did something interesting. It asked how. How did they make it? How does it not rust? How did ancient people achieve something modern science only understood in the last 100 years? That is the wrong question. The right question is why this one survived when everything around it turned to dust. Because there are things that should have turned to dust 1,000 years ago. And some of them did, and some of them didn't. And the gap between those two things, between the ones that lasted and the ones that didn't, that gap is where this story lives. Welcome back. And if you are new here, Dark Mysteries is where we go to the places that YouTube is not supposed to take you. Not the easy explanations, not the comfortable version of history, not the story that ends with "and so science figured it out." The other version, the one that science is still sitting with, quietly, and still wondering. What I am about to walk you through is real. Every single object I am going to show you is museum verified, documented by scientists, studied by archaeologists, materials engineers, astrophysicists, people who spent their careers trying to explain these things. And none of them have a clean answer. By the end of this video, you are not going to feel amazed. You are going to feel something much darker than that. Let's go. Let me put you somewhere. Let me put you in Delhi, but not the Delhi you know. The year is 402 AD. The Gupta Empire is near its height. The world has no printing press, no compass, no telescope, no concept yet of what iron chemistry even is. A king named Chandragupta II is alive. He is about to commission something. He orders a column to be built, 23 feet tall, almost 7 tons of pure iron. No steel, pure iron, because iron is what they had, and iron is what they knew. And they were very good at working with it. He erects it in an open courtyard. No shelter, no covering, no protection from the environment. For 1,600 years, the monsoon has hit this pillar every season. For 1,600 years, the summer heat has baked it. For 1,600 years, humidity has crept across its surface every single night. This is exactly the kind of exposure that should have destroyed it. You know what happened instead. Iron rusts. That is not an opinion. That is chemistry. Iron exposed to oxygen and moisture forms iron oxide. Rust. The process is thermodynamically inevitable. It is as certain as gravity. Under normal conditions, a 7-ton iron structure in the Indian climate will be unrecognizable within 3 to 4 centuries. Most of it should be gone, literally dissolved and returned to the earth as mineral powder. And yet, in 2003, scientists at the Indian Institute of Technology finally found out why. Not a guess, not a theory, an actual chemical analysis. The surface of the pillar is coated in a microscopic crystalline compound, a form of iron hydrogen phosphate, that had formed during the original forging process and been reinforcing itself ever since. The name of this compound is misawite, and here is where things get uncomfortable. Misawite is a compound that we only learn how to intentionally create as a metal surface treatment in the 20th century, in the modern era, in controlled laboratories, with industrial-grade chemistry. Someone in 402 AD produced it in a forge, with charcoal fire and manual labor, without any formal understanding of molecular chemistry, without knowing what a molecule was. They just knew something, somehow, enough to produce this exact compound, in this exact configuration, on this exact surface, in a way that has preserved it for 16 centuries. And understand the gap we are talking about here. This is what it takes today to produce a comparable surface treatment on iron and steel. This facility, this equipment, these processes, this level of precision chemistry, all of this developed over the course of the 20th century by armies of materials scientists with advanced degrees and industrial infrastructure. This is what it took. And someone in 402 AD did the equivalent of this in a mud floor forge without leaving a single written instruction about how. But someone in 402 AD figured it out. In a forge, with open fire, with iron he had never seen analyzed in a laboratory, with hands that knew something his mind couldn't have named. And the thing he made is still standing in a courtyard in Delhi. Right now, tonight, cleaner than the day it was raised. The compound the pillar is coated in, misolite, was first intentionally synthesized in a controlled laboratory setting in the 20th century. That is not a gap of a few decades. Between the iron pillar being forged and the first time we deliberately reproduce what it is made of, 1,500 years passed. 1,500 years. Now, what if I told you that was the least impressive one? 1901. Sponge divers working off the Greek island of Antikythera. This is routine work. They have done it hundreds of times. They go down, they collect sponges from the sea floor, they come back up. But this dive is different. On the sea floor, beneath the wreck of an ancient Roman cargo ship, one of the divers finds something. He brings it up. It looks like a lump of corroded bronze. It looks like nothing. It drips seawater on the deck of the boat while the diver turns it in his hands, trying to understand what he is looking at. He cannot. Nobody can. Not yet. It goes into a crate. It goes to a museum. And then it sits there for almost 50 years before anyone understands what it is. A researcher named Vallejo Stiles is going through the museum collection in 1902. He notices something the divers had missed. Inside the corrosion, gears, not one gear, dozens of them, interlocking, precise, bronze. He calls other researchers, and slowly, over the next 50 years, using X-ray imaging that didn't exist, when the thing was pulled out of the sea, a picture emerges, and the picture is impossible. This device, built in approximately 100 BC, could predict solar eclipses, not roughly, not approximately, precisely. It could tell you when the next eclipse would occur, what type it would be, and where on Earth it would be visible. It could track lunar cycles, the positions of the planets, the timing of the ancient Olympic Games. It had an actual dial for the four-year Olympiad cycle. The sky was not a mystery to the person who built this. The sky was a schedule, and this device was how they kept track of it. 37 interlocking bronze gears, calibrated to tolerances that required precision machining that we were not prepared to assign to the ancient world. And here is a number that should stop you cold. The next mechanical device of comparable complexity was not built until 1,400 years later. 1,400 years. In the 1300s, in 14th century Europe, a cathedral clock. That is not a gap, that is a cliff. And in between, 1,400 years of nothing, not slower progress, not gradual development, nothing. The level of mechanical precision that produced the Antikythera Mechanism simply did not exist again for a millennium and a half, which means either that was a one-time freak accident that happened to be genius, or something interrupted a much larger story. What happened in between? Where did the knowledge go? Nobody has answered that, and the people who try to answer it tend to get very quiet, very quickly. Okay, I need you to notice something for a second. We have been through two artifacts. Two different civilizations, 2 different centuries, one in India, one in ancient Greece, and both of them point at the same thing, knowledge that should not exist yet. This is not coincidence. I want you to hold on to that. And when you see the next 5, because there are 5 more, I think you are going to start to feel what I felt when I first mapped all of this out. There's a pattern here, and it is not a comfortable one. Let me show you. 1936, Baghdad. A German archaeologist named Wilhelm Koenig is going through storage crates at the National Museum of Iraq. This is the work of archaeology that nobody makes films about. The slow, methodical cataloging of old things. Pick it up, look at it, write it down, move on. He picks up what appears to be a simple clay vessel, about 5 inches tall, unremarkable terracotta, something you would walk past in any market in the ancient world without a second glance. Inside the vessel, he finds a copper cylinder, capped at the bottom. Inside the copper cylinder, an iron rod, suspended in the exact center. The whole assembly is sealed at the top with bitumen, a form of asphalt. He has seen similar object before in other collections. He writes a paper. He proposes that this might be an ancient electrochemical cell, a battery, built somewhere between 250 and 224 BC. That is 2,250 years ago. Researchers who replicated the design found it produces between 1.1 and 2 volts of electricity when filled with an acidic solution. Grape juice works, lemon juice works, vinegar works, all of which were readily available in ancient Iraq. This is not theoretical. This is not speculation. Build this exact object. Fill it with grape juice, wire it to a voltmeter, and the needle moves. It generates electricity. Full stop. The debate is not whether it generates electricity. It does. The debate is what it was for. Electroplating? Some researchers believe it was used to deposit thin layers of gold or silver onto base metals. A goldsmithing technique. Pain relief? Ritual use? Acupuncture-adjacent applications? Nobody agrees. But this is the part one want you to focus on. When archaeologists surveyed the surrounding region, they found not one of these vessels. They found dozens, in multiple sites. Not one, dozens. This was not a single artisan making one unusual object. This was a production pattern. Someone was making these things in quantity, for a purpose, at scale. And then the culture that was making them stopped. Someone was making these, in quantity, for a purpose. And then the culture that was making them was absorbed, or conquered, or destroyed, or simply stopped. And what we have left is one clay pot in a glass case in a museum, with the wiring still inside. Let me be straight with you for a second. I know what you might be thinking right now. You might be thinking, okay, this is just a curiosity video. Cool old stuff. Weird history facts. Science will eventually explain it all. I hear you. And I would probably think the same thing, except for one problem. We are halfway through, and the explanation for every single one of these objects includes a version of the same sentence. We don't fully understand how they knew this. Not we figured it out. Not it makes sense in context. We don't fully understand how they knew this. Every single time. The next three are the ones that actually kept me up at night. So stay with me, because we are not done, not even close. Inside the Temple of Antikythera, Egypt, one of the best preserved ancient temples in the country, there is something on the walls, carved into the stone, painted, ancient, a series of images that Egyptologists have been arguing about for over a century, not because they are unusual for ancient Egyptian art, but because of what they look like. They depict something. Large, elongated, bulb-shaped objects, rounded at one end, narrowing to a stem at the other. Inside each one, a carved human figure, floating, surrounded by what appears to be energy or light radiating outward from their body. The official Egyptological explanation: these are symbolic representations, lotus flowers, mythological imagery. The imagery has been in the mainstream record since the 1800s. For a century and a half, that was the end of the conversation. Until 1980. In the 1980s, an Austrian electrical engineer named Walter Gorn looked at the dendera carvings and noticed something. He was not an Egyptologist. He was someone who worked with electrical equipment. And what he saw in the proportions of the carved bulb shapes, the elongation, the stem, the rounded end, the figure inside, looked familiar to him. It looked like a Crookes tube. A Crookes tube is a direct technological ancestor of the fluorescent light bulb. You produce a partial vacuum inside a glass envelope, run current through it, and it glows. He built a replica based on the dimensions in the carvings. It produced light. I am not telling you the ancient Egyptians had electric lights. I want to be clear about that. I am telling you something more carefully calibrated than that. I am asking, why does a carving that the mainstream Egyptological record describes as purely symbolic imagery produce light when you build it? Not almost produce light, not sort of glow. Produce light. That is not a proof, but it is a question that has never received a satisfying answer. And a question without an answer is exactly what we have been following this entire video. 1898, Saqqara, Egypt. Archaeologists excavating a tomb find a small wooden object, 6 inches long. Dark wood, ancient. It looks like a bird. It has wings, a body, a pointed front end. They label it a model bird. They pack it in a crate. It goes to the Cairo Museum. And there it stays, filed under ornithological models, forgotten, for 71 years. 71 years, 2 world wars, the invention of radar, the jet engine, the nuclear bomb, the transistor, the computer. Neil Armstrong takes a walk on the moon, and the Saqqara bird sits in a storage room in Cairo, in a box labeled model bird, waiting for someone to look at it carefully. In 1969, someone does. Dr. Khalil Messiah is a doctor, an Egyptian physician with a background in surgery, which means he understands the geometry of the human body, how things are shaped, what shapes mean. And he is also an amateur archaeologist with a particular interest in ancient models. He reaches into a storage crate. He pulls out the Saqqara bird. He holds it up. He looks at the wings. He turns it. He looks at the tail. And he stops. Real birds do not have vertical tail fins. Real birds have horizontal tail feathers that spread wide. They function as pitch control, lifting or lowering the nose. A vertical tail fin is an aircraft feature. It controls your side-to-side movement. It keeps the nose pointed forward. The Saqqara bird has a vertical tail fin. It does not have a horizontal tail. This is not subtle. This is not ambiguous. If you look at the profile of the Saqqara bird next to a real bird and next to a modern glider, the comparison is uncomfortable. Dr. Masiha tested it. He threw it like a glider, and the Saqqara bird, a 2,200-year-old piece of Egyptian wood, flew, not far, not dramatically, but in a stable, controlled glide, exhibiting aerodynamic lift, behaving exactly like a scale model of a flying device. In 200 BC, in Egypt, I said earlier that I was going to show you 7 things. This one is different from the others. This one is not mysterious in the way you might expect. It is not a device or a carving or an artifact. This one is a building material. And the reason it is on this list is that it is stronger today than it was when it was first poured. Not still intact. Not holding up well. Actively getting stronger for 2,000 years. Modern concrete, the kind that holds up our harbors, our bridges, our seawalls, begins deteriorating within decades. In a marine environment, exposed to salt water, the process is even faster. The salt attacks the calcium silicate hydrate in the concrete matrix. Hairline cracks form. Water gets in. The rebar inside starts to rust. The rust expands, causing more cracking. The cycle accelerates. Within 50 years, most marine concrete structures show significant degradation. Within a century, many need replacement. Roman harbor structures built 2,000 years ago are still standing. Some of them are still in use. In 2023, researchers at MIT and UC Berkeley published a paper that identified the mechanism. Roman concrete, specifically the kind used in marine structures, contains a mineral called tobamorite. Tobamorite forms from the reaction between the volcanic ash the Romans used as an aggregate and the seawater in the environment. And when Roman concrete cracks, which it eventually does, the tobamorite grows. It grows into the crack, crystal by crystal, bridging the gap, sealing it from the inside. A self-healing building material, not designed with that intention. There is no evidence the Romans understood the chemistry of what they were doing, but what they were doing produced a self-healing building material that we only understood the mechanism of in a laboratory with electron microscopes and spectroscopy in 2023. The same year I am sitting in a room connecting dots that somehow nobody has connected in exactly this way before. They knew something we forgot, and we are only now, just now, beginning to remember. The Pantheon in Rome is the largest unreinforced concrete dome in the world. Built by the Emperor Hadrian in the 2nd century AD, it is still the largest, not the largest that survives, the largest in the world, including everything built since. 2,000 years, still standing, still the record, and we are only now understanding the chemistry of how. I want you to picture something. You are underground, not a small room, a tunnel, a long, deliberate, carved, from the bedrock tunnel beneath the desert floor at Saqqara, Egypt. The ceiling is close. The walls press in. The lights are modern archaeological strings that barely reach into the alcoves on either side. And in those alcoves, on either side of you, set into alcoves carved directly into the limestone walls, are granite boxes. The word boxes is insufficient. Each one is approximately 13 feet long, 7 feet wide, and 10 feet tall including the lid. The lid alone is 3 feet thick. Each one weighs approximately 100 tons. There are 25 of them, all identical. Something is waiting. Each one is carved from a single block of granite, not assembled, not joined, cut from one piece. Each lid, cut from a separate single piece. Granite is one of the hardest natural materials on Earth. It requires specialized abrasive tools just to scratch, let alone machine. And the machining tolerance on the interior surfaces of these boxes is 0.002 inches. For reference, a human hair is 0.003 inches thick. The interior of the Serapeum sarcophagi is machined to a tolerance that is finer than a human hair, across a 13-foot surface, on a material that is harder than most things you have ever touched. The equivalent tolerance in modern manufacturing, optical lens production. That level of precision has exactly one purpose: to hold something that must not move, that must not shift, that must remain perfectly, immovably, permanently in place. Something that matters enough to invest hundreds of thousands of person-hours cutting a 100-ton granite container to optical lens tolerances. 25 times. What were they holding? Nobody knows. What were they building? The question hangs in the air. Let it hang. 7 objects. 7 different places on this map. 7 different civilizations or eras. Iron Pillar, India. Antikythera Mechanism, Greece. Baghdad Battery, Iraq. Dendera Reliefs, Egypt. Saqqara Bird, Egypt. Roman Concrete, the entire Mediterranean world. Serapeum, Egypt. All of them pointing at the same thing. Knowledge that our official historical timeline says should not exist yet. Not in one culture. In all of them. Separated by centuries and continents. Pointing at the same impossible direction. Now here's what I want to propose. Not as a fact, as a framework, as a way of thinking about what we have seen. What if these 7 objects are not evidence of ancient genius? What if they are the wreckage of something much, much larger? Think about what survives a catastrophe. Not books burn. Not knowledge held in mines. People die. Not infrastructure. It crumbles. What survives is what was carved in stone, forged in iron, built into bedrock. What if these 7 things are fragments? Echoes? The scattered remains of a body of knowledge that was almost completely erased? And whatever erased it, did a nearly perfect job. We talk about ancient humans as if history is a ladder, and we are at the top, and every civilization before us was on a lower rung, climbing upward, slowly and inevitably toward us. But what if the ladder had already been climbed? Once before? What if someone was already at the top or close to it, and then something knocked the whole ladder down? And what we have, when we look at the Iron Pillar and the Antikythera Mechanism and the Serapeum and all the rest, what we have is the bottom of the ladder, still standing, and whatever was built above it is gone, and we do not know what knocked it down. The most dangerous moment in any civilization is not when it doesn't know enough. It's when it forgets what it already knew. We talk about the fall of the Roman Empire like it was a political event. It was also the erasure of a concrete formula. We talk about the burning of ancient libraries like it was a tragedy for history. It was also the deletion of a metallurgy technique that took us 1,500 years to rediscover. The objects we've looked at tonight are not proof of ancient aliens. They are not proof of secret advanced technology. I don't know what happened. Nobody does. But I know this. The most dangerous thing a civilization can do is not build something it doesn't understand. It is forget that it already understood. The Iron Pillar is still standing. The gears of the Antikythera Mechanism are still intact in a museum in Athens. The sarcophagi in the Serapeum are still exactly where they were placed, empty, precise, waiting. Whatever was lost, a small amount of it survived. We have found it. We just haven't understood it yet. They are proof that we have been here before, and that we forgot. Drop your theory in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you think is happening here. Whether you think it is lost knowledge, or coincidence, or something we haven't named yet. Because the most interesting thing about all of these objects is that they are still open questions. Nobody has closed them. And open questions are where everything interesting begins. If this video shook something loose for you, subscribe, save it, share it with the one person in your life who needs to stay up tonight thinking about things they can't explain. And if you want to go deeper, the next one is already waiting. I will see you there.